As a YouTube thumbnail designer, I often find myself having to explain the basics of photography to my clients about how to take a good photo of themselves for a thumbnail. It's becoming quite tedious, so I'm creating this video to try and solve this problem for myself and hopefully help others who have the same struggles. So whether you're a YouTuber who takes a lot of photos for thumbnails or a designer who creates thumbnails for them, I think the following information will be useful for both. Lighting is essential in photography as it helps set the atmosphere and mood of a shot. It can also affect the way colors look and how the subject of the photo is seen. Lighting can make a photo look brighter, darker, or more dramatic. But taking photos for thumbnails is almost like doing product photography. You want to have the neutral lighting and the subject should be well lit because in 99% of the cases, that subject will be cut out and placed onto a different background. Natural daylight is often the most desirable light source for these types of photos, especially when studio lighting is unavailable. A slightly overcast day provides a great soft light that will nicely lit the subject. Direct sunlight isn't usually desirable because it creates hard shadows on the subject's face, and when the sun is strong, it's best to find some light shade to position your subject. But considering an average YouTuber goes outside once a month, good photos can be taken indoors too. Position the subject near a window, face towards the light, and you got yourself a photo with good lighting that can be used in various different thumbnail scenarios. Key takeaway for lighting and photography is to have a well-lit subject with little to no shadows. This would be a general advice for a generic type of thumbnail. But if you come up with some creative concepts for your thumbnail where, for example, you want to achieve the mysterious effect with dark backgrounds and strong face shadows, please plan your photo shoot accordingly. Painting shadows on a strongly lit face will never look realistic unless your designer can paint it pixel by pixel. If your thumbnail is a dark scene, go and take a photo in darker environment. If your thumbnail is an outside scene with bright sun in the sky, go outside and take the photo. You get the point. There's no need to worry about the rule of thirds, golden spiral, or anything like that. To get the perfect shot, make sure that your entire body is within the frame and nothing is cut off. If you're taking a selfie for a classic reaction thumbnail, that's fine. However, if you take a selfie with your arm cut off and your shoulder deformed or raised, and then ask your designer to show your full body, they should kindly suggest that you take another photo. If you're too lazy to do that and insist on the designer doing the unnecessary hard work with photos they got, then they should stop working with you. Just kidding. Or am I? And since we're talking about photos, absolutely do not send a selfie if your thumbnail needs to show you wrestling with a bear and then expect it to look realistic. Perspective is often very hard to match in photos, so please keep this in mind when shooting for your thumbnail. Find something similar to a bear and then wrestle with it for a moment. It will help you in the post-processing wonderfully. It's 2023 and quick selection tools have become really good at quickly selecting the subject in the photo and cutting it from the background. If you're a YouTuber who makes your own thumbnails and you want to save the time spent making thumbnail, this type of tool is perfect for you. But there is still one thing to have in mind when taking a photo. Background and the subject should be contrasting. You don't want to wear a white shirt and take a photo in front of a white wall. Instead, you should either change the shirt to a different color or find a different background. And while we're talking about the shirts, if your final thumbnail needs to adjust the shirt color or change it to something you can't get in real life, it would be best if you could wear a white or gray shirt. Generally, these two neutral colors will make for an easiest and most believable color swap. Turning white or light gray into any other color is really easy, but turning black shirt into bright yellow or white, not so much. It will just look junky. And here's another thing. If you have a long or messy hair, or if you have beard, please make sure the background is always contrasting color. Black hair on black background or brown beard on brown background will in most cases be impossible to cut out fully and nicely. Unless you take a photo with a shallow depth of field, which will show you a significant difference between the subject and the background. But more on this in the next tip. I don't want to get much into details here, but let me briefly explain these two terms and tell you why you should take it in consideration when shooting photos for thumbnails. Focal length is a measurement of the size of the lens in a camera. It is measured in millimeters and determines how much of a scene will be captured in a photo. A shorter focal length, for example, 17 millimeters, will capture a wider angle of view, while a longer focal length, for example, 100 millimeters, will capture a narrower angle of view. Focal length has a significant influence on your images. It causes a predictable degree of image distortion, which can make or break your photo. But how to know which focal length to use? There is no definitive answer, but the best tip I can give you is to use a 50mm focal length. It will provide the most accurate representation of your subject as it does not distort their face. Anything below 50mm will possibly give you some undesirable distortions of the facial features, and while the result might look amusing, I wouldn't say it's ideal. On the other hand, focal length of over 50mm can flatten your subject's facial features, which could be flattering. However, at extremes, it can make the person's face look overly wide or fat. If you're taking photos with your phone, using your standard camera lens will be good for thumbnail purposes. You can also use the portrait mode, but make sure to increase your depth of field. Depth of field refers to how much of a photo is in focus. It is determined by the aperture of the camera and the distance between the camera and the subject. Aperture is measured in f-stops. If the aperture is small, for example f22, you'll get a clear background. And if the aperture is large, for example f1.4, you'll get a very blurred background. So why is this important for thumbnails? Shallow depth of field usually means your subject will be in focus, while the edges of the body will be slightly blurred. You don't want to send your designer a photo with half of your body blurred. It will make it nearly impossible to get a nice body cut out, and that could result in a bad final thumbnail. For portrait photography, an aperture of approximately f4 is usually the ideal setting. This aperture will provide enough depth of field to keep the entire subject in focus, and you'll be able to cut it out easily. When doing a photo shoot for a thumbnail, it's always best to take multiple photos and have them ready to be edited. No need to take 100 of them, but 10 or 20 should be more than enough, especially if you're doing some interesting poses for a thumbnail scene. In one photo, your facial expression might be on point, but in another, you'll have the better hand pose. Having multiple options will make it very easy to match images and create a desired look. The equipment really doesn't matter. It's great if you can take photos with a professional camera, but phone cameras these days are also very good at taking photos. Even if you have some low-tier budget phone that takes photos in low resolution with pixels visible, you can just take the photo and run it through an image upscaler. It's going to be good enough for YouTube, as long as the lighting is okay. In case you don't have someone to help you take photos, a tripod is always a great solution. And lastly, we have the webcams. They are a good and easy choice for reaction thumbnails, especially if you can get good lighting inside your room or studio. Sometimes a client will send me a finished video that was filmed outdoors to create a thumbnail from. They usually say something like this.
Hey Joseph, here's the finished video. Take some screenshots and make the thumbnail. I need to upload it in 1 hour. Cheers.
I am not going to watch your 30-minute video frame by frame only to take a screenshot of an action scene where motion blur is going wild and then try to make a good thumbnail out of it. Please don't be this type of person. Always try to take a few moments during filming to take a photo of each participant in your video doing your desired face expressions, and then take a group photo if you can. Essentially, do whatever you can to get some clear photos, but consider the advice I've mentioned in previous tips. If your video is good and interesting enough that you think your audience will enjoy it, it should be no problem for you to put some time and thoughts into crafting a good assets for your thumbnail. Thanks for watching.
Great news, girls. I found the next video for us to watch. Let's click on it and have some more fun.